Hey there, Podcrushers. You're tuning in today for a very special bonus episode. What was that? That was a little bit of Conan O'Brien doing like a bad.
It was an impression of Conan O'Brien doing an impression of him as a teen.
Yeah. Right. Let's just pontificate in a moment for how nice it was when we had Conan.
Oh, so nice.
glory days.
That's not today though.
Bring
we don't
him
have
back,
any.
bring him
We don't
back.
have any. We got no Conan. We're just talking about boning. No, it's my show. We're talking about.
David in the background is like,
We're talking about my show. You. This is a bonus episode of where we're recapping part 2.
full of spoilers.
Full of
Same
spoilers.
Same warning as last time. If you have not watched part 2, do not listen to this episode yet. This is Podcrushed.
The podcast that takes the sting out of rejection, one crushing middle school story at a time.
And where guests share their teenage memories, both meaningful and mortifying.
And we're your hosts. I'm Nava, a former middle school director.
I'm Sophie, a former 5th grade teacher.
And I'm Penn, a middle school dropout.
We're bringing you another special episode of Podcrushed, where we break down part 2 of season 4 of You. I'm so excited. I have truly been waiting for this moment with bated breath.
Me too.
Clearly. Yeah, I can't wait. We talked about this when we debriefed part 1, but for Nava and I, part 2 is...
What was the word? You used
Juicy.
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 One of Nava's favorite
Bite
descriptors
right
in
into
terms
it.
of television.
Nava, that's her favorite word to use, and also she says it. It's like it's onomatopoeia. Juicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't
I
have the
love
same
a TV show
connotations
that's
for
juicy.
right. No, yeah, and that's clear. It doesn't have the same connotation for me. When you say that, I'm not like yes. I'm like
What would make it juicy for you? Like, it's
right.
intellectually enlightening. It makes my frontal cortex expand.
Yeah, that's
All of this is
yeah.
so sexual.
I didn't even think that, but you're right. Yeah, what would it be for me? I don't know.
Stimulating,
Pass. That's what this whole thing is going to be. Pass.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good pass.
Well, Penn, maybe we can get into it. When we filmed an episode about you, our first episode that went up on YouTube, you described season 4 in one word.
Oh, right. Well, I
Nope.
was forced to though.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it can be done, and I don't know that I did a great job, but yes, I said nope.
Well, can you break that down for us? What did you mean when you said nope?
I think because every time you think you know where it's going and what it's really trying to say, you're like, oh, no, that wasn't it. You think in the beginning of the season probably that the whole question is going to be who's doing the killing.
Yeah.
Well, by episode 5, we know who's doing the killing. Or
Do we?
do. So
My frontal
then-
cortex just shrank back.
Yeah.
In episode 6, Phoebe gets kidnapped by her stalker
Yes.
Yes.
and taken up to the hotel
that's
room.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So episode 7, by the end of episode 7, you know that Rhys isn't that Rhys is dead.
Yep.
And that Rhys is not Rhys. That's
Yes.
so and that's like the second reveal that everybody thinks the part 2 is about. So you got 3 more episodes
Oh, there's
left.
so much.
So that was really what I meant. It was just like nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it.
Interesting.
You know, and then by the end it's just like where's this going to go?
I thought the nope meant you think Joe's going to change. Nope.
That too. That's probably better.
Comment below whose nope is better, Penn's or Nava's.
I have to say,
Like for Penn, subscribe for Nava.
both for
Yeah.
Sophie.
Yeah.
I have to say that when I watched episode 7, I was the last one out of the 3 of us to watch part 2. And I was texting you guys. I was texting our group chat, like live tweeting basically as I was watching. I was like, oh my God.
I didn't see any of those. So.
Yeah. You can scroll back.
He gets them 3 days later. Yeah.
And when Reese is killed and then his hallucination of Reese pops up, I was like, oh, he has a twin.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, I'm so glad that was
Really
your
funny.
reaction.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
It was funny because she was like, oh my God, best plot twist ever. And I was like, I said something that gave it away.
Yeah.
And I saw it coming in episode 5. And Sophie was like, you knew he had a twin?
No, I said, you knew there were 2 of them?
Yeah, you said you knew there were 2 of them. So then I was like, oh, I think you're not as far along as I think I was.
Do you mean developmentally?
No. Then at the very last second, he says, Reese did know her, or Reese didn't know her, and we do have her in a cage, then I realized, like, oh, okay, he's part of Joe, not part of Reese. But there was a split second where I was like, oh my God, this wasn't what I expected.
Evil twin.
Yeah, right.
So as you just mentioned, Penn, there are a ton of plot twists, and I watched it a second time. And as I was watching the second time, I was like, wow, they really left a lot of breadcrumbs. My favorite one, I'll say at the end, there's like a very, very obvious one. But I thought it'd be fun to just go over some of the breadcrumbs, like the clues that they gave to the twist. So the first clue, I don't know if this is in order, but the first clue that I thought of was that they showed a shot of the condemned bomb shelter. And we should be thinking, like, why would they show a shot of a condemned bomb shelter unless it's going to be the place where the cage will live?
Yeah, and that's when Joe's walking with Kate, and he mentioned,
giving her the tour.
it's funny, when you just said breadcrumbs, I was like, I'm not sure about any of these breadcrumbs. I don't recall any breadcrumbs.
There's so
But
many.
I'm really interested to hear what they are. But yeah, I think that was where, look, the whole time we were shooting, I always trust the writers and producers implicitly, like they know how to make this thing, and they know how to make it work. So it's like, you don't let me get in. That was also why I waited until season 4 to direct. I was like, don't let me get in there. Don't let me get in there. I'm gonna try. No, don't. So along the way, I was like, how are we gonna give a nod to the bomb shelter and not have it feel like, what's in the bomb shelter? But yeah,
it's subtle enough.
Yeah, and then we noticed that Reese's monologues kind of mirrored a lot of Joe's inner monologue and his voiceover tone.
Yeah, a lot of his monologues are the same tone as yours.
Oh, you mean when he's alive?
When he's alive and he's giving monologues.
To Joe, though.
To Joe, they match Joe. I noticed that the second time too. I was like, oh, they really had him mirror Joe's tone.
So that must kind of almost had to play like 3 different people in a way. He had to play Reese, but not that much, like the real Reese.
Yeah.
Then he had to play the Reese that's getting to know Joe, who has to seem like a real person a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Who's like kind of congenial, or have we been through this before? What's the difference between genial and congenial? I never.
We've not been through this.
Okay,
congenial was the right one.
Okay, and then he's like the Reese that is like, now you know I'm not real. Now I'm gonna be really crazy.
I feel like his accent changes too.
I am really curious how he thought about that. I do know, because I was there, that he was never positive. Nor I don't think anybody could be. I think it's like you're finding that. I was never positive. I don't think the directors were positive. And the writers in LA were just like, just keep going. Yep, that's right. Yep, just keep going. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, that's right. So, yeah, that was a very tricky line to walk with Ed. I think in particular Ed's monologues, because he has so many. He really does have a lot of them. He's talking so much that you have to start wondering, like,
it's
Who's
true.
This guy.
It only happened once, so I don't know if this is a breadcrumb or not. But the first time that Reese and Joe come together in person is right after Joe and Kate have boinked, is how I wrote it. I don't know why. Yes, I laughed.
You might want to talk to the writer. And
I should be in that writer's room, guys. Hire me. The first time that Reese is waiting for Joe in Joe's apartment, and we don't even know how Reese got in, Reese is wearing the same outfit as Joe. And I think that that's a breadcrumb. And it's the only time, but they're wearing the same outfit.
It surely, shout out to Sam Perry, who handled costume. That was a particularly tricky scene, I think. Because at that point, again, Ed did something that's very hard to do, which is like, he had to be convincingly like somebody who's capable of this. But then all the talking he's doing has to be very charming. In my recollection, we were just, for 2 episodes, it's like really on a razor's edge, trying not to tip our hats too much. And in that scene, I think maybe more than any other, it was, I think we both in that scene, we were like, it was a work in progress.
I watched it a second time with my dad, and I will say that when Reese was like in the apartment waiting, my dad was like, he didn't figure it out, but he knew that was wrong. Like he was like, how did he get in? They're not even going to explain it. They're not even going to try to explain how he's just waiting for him in his apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they did actually, because I rewatched it. Maybe it wasn't the first time he came in, but that was a breadcrumb we noticed, was that Reese could kind of come and go as he pleased into Joe's place. But he says, growing up in council apartments, council flats, you learn how to pick locks.
That's right, he does. Yeah, there's always a nice...
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Also, I really feel like we should have Tommy on here.
We
Just
need
to
to
be
bring
like,
him.
he should
We
be
need to
like-
bring him on.
We should have had him in this episode.
Yeah,
Shut up.
really.
That would have been hysterical.
Should I call him? Tell him to come over.
Let's do another bonus. A bonus
Okay.
bonus with
Yeah.
Tommy.
Yeah. Actually, my dad's commentary during the show is very hilarious.
I'm sure
I
it's
should
so
film him.
good.
Yeah. Okay. Another clue is that the key to the bomb shelter cage area is in the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde book, which is sort of like a nod to Joe having two personalities this season.
That's right. Yep. I forgot about that.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I totally missed that. And then you put that on this list and I rewatched and I was like, oh my God, how did she catch this? It was so quick. Yeah, you're good. You're good at that.
Thanks.
And then there was Phoebe Stalker being an erotomaniac. How do you say that?
Erotomaniac, I think.
Erotomaniac. I remember when I watched that episode, I watched that episode and then took a few days to finish the rest of the part 2. And I texted Nava and I said how much I loved that twist of her, or that plot point of her stalker kind of being obsessed with her through the TV and that commentary on social media. And Nava was just very quiet. And
she's
she
like,
was like, are you talking about the waiter? And I couldn't figure out why she was being so cagey.
It's like Joe's also an erotomaniac, but is that Yeah,
That's a
that was
good
pretty
one.
cool marrying. Okay, my favorite plot twist, not plot twist, my favorite breadcrumb is that in episode 5, they show Joe committing all the murders exactly the way he actually committed them.
They actually do, yeah, right.
Yeah,
'Cause
I think
he's-
that's brilliant.
And what's the context again?
It's when Roald has him and he's like, here's
he's
your
explaining
eat the
it,
reach
and then
killer.
you see it.
And he's explaining and they're seeing it, but it's sort of like you think it's a projection of Roald's mind.
No,
but
but
you're
it's actually what
actually
happens.
watching Joe kill everyone
Yeah.
in the exact manner that he kills them.
Yeah,
I
this
think
is-
that's brilliant.
Yeah, no. This is actually where I think like it so pays off in part 2 in ways that you really don't anticipate because you don't realize how many more twists are coming,
Yeah.
and and that is to me the possible. I shouldn't say shame, but it's just like to me, I
Shame Netflix again. Do it, Penn.
Yeah. Netflix. I'm gonna need a job after this show ends. So
But wait, I have another question for you. So in episode 8, which we'll get into later, my favorite episode from the whole U canon,
Yeah,
8 and 9
me too,
tied for
me
me.
too.
But 8 just brilliant, blew my mind. In episode 8, it's the only time in the whole series that we've ever seen the opening credits be different. It's like a pencil drawing, and I think we're given to think that it's Marianne drawing it, right? Because she's an artist, she uses pencil. And then the whole episode is narrated from her point of view, and she's talking to her daughter, but we think it's Marianne's imagination sort of trying to give herself some relief from the horrible situation that she's in. But then later we find out that she is alive and that she is returned to her daughter. So I'm wondering, did she tell her daughter that fairy tale? Were we just seeing it?
yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, that's
That's
so
actually-
that's so
actually-
cool. That just actually gave me little goosebumps. That's really
sort of
cool.
what I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I just freaked out about it earlier, but episode 8 and 9, so good. Let's talk about them. I don't have a question. I just want you to talk about them, how it felt for you to perform them, because they really do stand out. 8 does something really special.
8 is very much the most.
We never get inside the female protagonist's head what it's
Yeah.
like to be in the cage. They finally, after 4 seasons, it's the
Yeah.
4th season, and that's like remarkable. There's just so much about that episode that's really special, and I want to know for you, like on set, sort of a huge part of it. What was it like?
We have had the female perspective before there's a Beck got her bit in the cage with voiceover. Love didn't have time in the cage as much as she had her perspective and then like her
She did have
bits with
voiceover.
40. So that's always something that they've been doing a bit of. It's like it's always this nice tipping the hat towards a different perspective. But they can never quite do it in the way that they've now done. And so something about episode 8, and so the first time I saw it, by the way, was when I was doing ADR, which is additional dialogue recording. After I'd done like recording some of the voiceover for like the last couple of episodes, I then had to do some for bits of Joe when she's seeing him or something. I had to be doing like the creepy Joe, like asking her like when she's getting out of the box, when he's taking her out of the box to put her in the cage, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?" That kind of thing. Like I had to be doing that. And so that was when I saw all that cut together for the first time. And because I wasn't in that stuff, and because I had to be prepping for the next episode, and because it's just an overall, just all-consuming role, I actually had only read the script for that stuff with her, I think once, maybe twice. So I wasn't focusing on it. It wasn't my job. So I actually wasn't really fully appreciating what was happening, to be honest. And then when I saw it cut together, I was just like, that's the whole point of this show.
Yeah.
We've been the entire series, because he's such an unreliable narrator, because he's ultimately like all the things that I say about him in press, and we know that, but we watch. It has to have always been, in order for it to be what it is, which is continuing to succeed in a good show, like, I think it always had to be leading to some kind of like authentic, we are not seeing from Joe's perspective. And we got it in a way that I just don't think we ever thought we were going to get it. Like it's something about it just hit me as so like, I was like, oh, wow. And Tati's performance is amazing.
It's the performance of her career.
Right. And I wasn't there for any of that. So like, I just, all of it, it was actually really lovely. It was so nice. For me as Joe, I mean, think about it. I'm always doing that. I'm always doing all of it. Like, I'm always like there.
You just get to watch it.
And I was able to watch it, and I was like, that is so good.
Yeah.
That is so like just refreshing and poignant and meaningful. And it, to me, it just in a moment cast retroactively the rest of the series backwards in time in a new light. I love it.
Am I correct in saying that there's no voiceover from you? There's no voiceover from Joe in that
It's
episode?
probably true. I'm not sure.
I don't think there
No,
is.
no. In the episode is probably not true because it's with her for what, about half the episode, or maybe the first 20 minutes or
I thought
something.
it was her the whole episode.
But at least
I don't
all of
think
those
so.
scenes with Marianne,
Yeah.
her storyline, we don't hear from you at all. We only hear from her. And I found actually how that made me feel as a viewer
Better.
towards Joe. What was so interesting is I realized that when we do get inside your head, when we hear your thoughts, no matter what you're doing, you are still charming. Like it's still, there's still a little part of you that is forgiving Joe. But when we don't, we saw you at the table with Marianne and you're watching Reese on the screen. Also, I'm sure it has to do with your acting in that episode too.
Probably not.
But you were I just wanted, like, I hated you a lot more in those scenes when
she
I
got
wasn't
catharsis for everything that's been building up over the last 2 years.
I just thought that was so interesting. I'm like, oh,
I
we
hate
really
Pat
don't.
Joe. No, it's true. You're odious in that episode.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Episode 8 is so interesting because it's both, I think it's both like in this season, a return to the you that we're familiar with and a departure from things that have been established in you. Like it's established that the female lead will always have a moment where she's charmed by Joe and then the veil is lifted. But Marianne is in this season the whole time knowing who Joe is.
Yeah.
Which is like an interesting perspective to see how things unfold. And sort of the biggest shift in this season is that Joe's mentee is onto him, and that's never happened before. And then the season plays out, and we'll get into that, where he harms his mentee, and he's never done that before. So I thought that was really sort of like setting the ground for what he's going to do to Nadia, begins in episode 8, and that's really interesting. It's like the show took some departures.
It did, yeah. I mean, again, I think
Yeah.
like this is where part 2 pays off. You made it.
You made it.
You got
you
there.
earned it.
How's it feel?
Well, Penn, you directed episode 9
Yes.
of the show, right?
Another great.
Incredible episode. And in this episode, we get to see all of the previous female leads from you.
Yeah.
And you have a moment with them.
Well, not all of them, but which I can tell you in a moment. There's a little bit of a nice little nod to another one we weren't able to get because of a scheduling conflict.
Oh,
But
okay.
sorry, finish your question.
So I was just wondering what that was like to direct your previous female
Yeah.
leads. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience with that episode?
I mean, it was just what you would think. Like it was poignant because like, you know, both Elizabeth and Victoria flew in. They were there for such a hot second. It was so quick. And because I was directing everything else, like there was no time to really even bask and enjoy it. It was just like,
Were they there at the same time? Did Victoria and Beck meet?
I don't think so. Victoria and Elizabeth.
I never call her Elizabeth. Did Victoria and Elizabeth meet?
I don't believe so. I wonder if they have. I don't know if they've met. But yeah, so it was I mean, I think particularly in the cage with Victoria, it was just like, well, this is where the show ultimately works best. Now, the caveat to that is actually that the show, I think, works best this season in the cage without Joe, you know? So that's cool. I think it's like you have season 1, and I know this isn't entirely an answer to your question, but I'm just taking it because it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
an
talk
appreciation
about
of
it.
what the series
Yeah.
actually does. It's in a way you could never repeat season one. Season one is not really meant to be repeated. I think. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you're never going to be able to do that arc again. And so then the answer in 2 is to be like, well, we have to bring in someone who's like basically his equal. You know, we have to bring in somebody who's not going to fit into this mold that you think the show's going to repeat. And so for seasons 2 and 3, we benefited from that and Victoria's performance and love as a character, and it actually just continued to elevate the show. So returning to just Joe, I think it has to then. So really, what I think is happening, by the way, is that season 4 is like the episode 8 to season 5, which is like episode 9. I think like there's a. Does that make sense? So
Maybe unpack it a little bit more.
Yeah. So what I mean is that season 4, I think, is not going to be as rewarding as it will until we've seen, should there be one, season 5. Now this is not even there's no spoiler here. Like we've not shot it. We don't know that it's happening. But I think it will. And I think now we really have done something different every season. Now that you can see retroactively. And I do believe that there's got to be a really satisfying resolution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And resolution more than conclusion. It's
Yeah.
like this has to resolve, not for
Yeah.
Joe. It has to resolve for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have we been doing in this crazy ride this whole
Yeah.
time? Because it is a bit unique in that way. It's like it's such an intense and crazy show with Joe at the center. And Joe has now actually changed. He's actually changed.
How has he changed?
Some people would say that he's embraced his true self, but I think that's not true because embracing your true self would actually mean something higher. Like what he's done is he's succumbed to his lower nature. He's fully succumbed.
So you think he's now like peak evil? He's set up to be peak evil in
I think
season
so.
5.
And so now that everything about the show, the same way that part 2 of season 4 is so rewarding and makes part 1 make more sense. I think that's the relationship seasons 4 and 5 are gonna have.
That makes sense.
That's what
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
No, that
I
does
feel
make
like
sense.
you see that he's peak evil in the scene with Nadia, where
Yeah.
he tells Nadia, you realize that Joe killed
Yeah.
her boyfriend and he's sending her to prison. And you realize he has absolutely no heart any longer.
Yeah, it is amazing because in the past, the mentees have been used to humanize Joe, to show that there is this part of him that wants to like take care of a child or nurture a young person's potential, protect them. And that's like the good that he sees in himself.
Yeah.
That sort of justifies the bad that he does. Like he only does bad when he's forced to. But now they completely eliminate that. Like Joe is just evil. Like
Yeah.
he will destroy anyone who gets in his path.
We spoke with one of your castmates on this season. I don't know if her episode will be out yet, but she was telling us a little bit about what it was like to be directed by you. And one of the things she said that was so nice is that because you come from a background of acting, that the notes you give feel either like easier to follow or to take, but you're giving them from a place of understanding, being on the other side of it. And Nava and I were talking about feedback generally a few days ago, and I was thinking it is always really nice when you get to have feedback from somebody who has experience in whatever field they're giving feedback.
Right. Yeah. And you know what you also said in that episode was that you both were like, you were reflecting on how I don't ever give you positive feedback in this show. And sure, so part of that is banter, part of that is true. But I'm not going to give you positive feedback.
No.
It's because this is not a field I have experience in. Now, as an actor,
I don't think that that's a criteria for giving compliments, but
No, we're not fishing. We're not fishing. We'll move on.
what I'm trying to say is like in my element, it's very easy to see what's needed. It's very easy to see. It's very easy to speak to another actor. Just because it's like it's what I know. It's what I know, probably better than anything. I mean, directing television is different from directing film. You are not in the driver's seat in the same way. You are. It's like there's 2 steering wheels, and you are facilitating a process. So it was a forgiving first directorial experience, you know, like if prepping an entire series, for instance, you know, being a producing director, like that would have been an entirely other lift. But I did love it, you know.
Yeah. I will say that for anyone who wants more details on Penn directing that episode, we did talk to you like right after you directed it while you were still in London. And there's a long clip on our YouTube, like a 10-minute clip of you giving some more details about that experience. So if you're interested.
Penn, can you share what I was texting you when I was watching that? I was like texting him as I was watching the episode. It's probably too self-aggrandizing.
I don't remember what you said.
I was like live.
No, I mean, I know you were very kind, but like.
No,
but
I
don't
was like
remember.
genuine because I had watched the first part. For better or for worse, I like will not like lie. I mean, I tell white lies sometimes, but in general, I try not to lie. I'm pretty straightforward. I try to be tactful, but Penn asked me what I thought of the first 5. I hadn't seen the second 5, and they without the second 5, they weren't my favorite. And so I was like, oh, how do I tell him this? And I didn't know it was going to get way better. So I had like sent some messages around it. And then the second half to me was like instantly like just so gratifying. And it made me appreciate what the first half was doing and why it had some of the limitations that it had. But when I got to episode 9, I was like freaking out that Penn directed it because it was so good. And I didn't realize until halfway through. So then I was just like texting him. Like, I was like, were you born to direct? Like, what's It was just so amazing to see him in that role. It was such a good episode.
Yeah, I mean, that's very kind.
I was very proud.
I do think that this, I guess what I was trying to say about direction in television is that I don't know where the line between like that, like I think a lot of that is because of the writing of the episode. I think a lot of that is because, and it's not just the writing of that episode, it's what's happening in that episode in the arc of the season and in the arc of the series.
Yeah.
I do think that episode probably 8, 9, 10 is my favorite kind of like brunch, maybe the whole series, I think. I mean, 8 is definitely my favorite episode of the whole series.
Yeah.
But then maybe what 8, 9 does is like really gratifying. So yeah, I mean, I think I was given a great episode to direct, and I think the one creative stamp that I left on it was the dream sequence, that I was able to shoot it in a way, and oh my goodness, it was still so hard to finish it in time, and there's cuts in it that still really bother me, but like we just weren't able to get to everything that I'd imagined, and oh my goodness, it was so painful.
You have to do a director's cut of the episode.
Well, no, it's like we literally weren't even able to
film it.
Like for instance, that shot of me turning around and seeing Victoria for the first time, where I have this like borderline totally comical bad expression on my face. I'm like, what's going on? That shot. We were on borrowed time already. We were way over. I literally just like after we had done we'd shot the whole sequence so many times in so many different angles. I just was like, just move the camera in and we shot that in one take, and it was so last minute, but it was such an important shot. Like we didn't have Joe's reaction to seeing love, and it was like, because there were so many other important pieces to get to make the dream sequence feel surreal. You know, it's just like all the crane shot over the cage. There was even there was even still stuff cut from it. But anyway, it was flying by the seat of my pants and our pants, and some of the best moments in that sequence were gotten like totally last minute. Like we only had one take. It was just.
But I didn't know that Victoria was gonna make an appearance in this season. You didn't give us any spoilers, and also when we debriefed part 1, you were like, I just want to know who thinks love is coming back. I was like, oh, she's definitely not coming back.
She
I thought
doesn't
you were like making
come
fun.
back.
No, she doesn't come back, but she does make an appearance, and because her character is so beloved, I think that's a big deal that she shows up. I was telling Nava though that as soon as she showed up on screen, obviously she's not real. It's the memory of her. I was like, I'm so happy, but I'm so sad because I know it's going to be over in a minute or 2 minutes. She still is one of my favorite characters.
I had the same reaction. Like I really liked seeing Beck. I liked seeing Elizabeth as Beck. But when I saw Love, I felt like very sad because I knew it was going to end quickly. And there's something about Penn and Victoria that is electric together. Like there's just something that I haven't seen with many other actors. I've seen it a few times. but I haven't seen it with you and any other person on that show. And I did want to ask you, does it feel different when you're doing scenes with Victoria? Because it feels different for the audience.
What Victoria does and has as a person, as a creative person, like as an actor, she's exceedingly committed, and her character is also designed in a way that she simply is. She's an equal. Beck was never.
Yeah,
Joe and Beck
That's
were
such
never.
a good point.
Joe and Beck were never at all aligned.
Yeah.
It really was all about Joe,
Yeah, it's
Joe
true.
and
It
being
was
like,
all
I'm just
deception.
I have
Yeah.
my delusion, so I'm going to. She was just an object the entire time. Like, so there's no real connection. The connection was far more along the lines of every other kind of like meet cute you've seen, and just turning that into like just kind of like jacking up those
Yeah.
Yeah.
chemicals, right?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like, whoa, love thing. And then and then frankly, the next one is love. They didn't even
Yeah.
go, Marianne is to be honest, like she's kind of like, okay, we've done the impossible in that we've like given Joe an equal. And now this like, actually we've taken a show about one man and made it about two people. So then Marianne is like, she's not even in the whole
Yeah.
arc of season 3. She's,
Mm.
and she is also a very different character. I think the point is that
She's
love,
on to him, though, which is cool.
Yeah. I think the point is that love is actually like Joe.
Yeah.
And she's made to be very smart. Even though Marianne is intelligent, she's not made to be the same way. So actually, what Joe and Love are able to do together is actually Joe is able to be more like if I'm thinking back to season 3, like I was able to do more in scenes with Love, I think, because when he's angry with her, like the real him is coming through. Like there's no veil there. So so as an actor, I actually think the way I'm able to play Joe when he's in a scene with Love is by design different. And then Victoria's commitment and talent on top of that to that role just unlocks it. And I honestly think what you also see with Joe a lot is him being exceedingly reserved because he's hiding things. But he can't do that with Love in the same way. So therefore, I'm more present in the scene. I'm actually thinking less. I'm doing more. So I've always enjoyed scenes with her the most because they do give me the most to do.
Let's talk about Kate. We sort of established in part 1 that she's a new kind of love interest, different in some ways. But I really want to know, I had this question as I watched it, especially the second time. Is Kate evil?
Kate is interesting because there's a different side to Joe coming out. So in the world where neither of them are evil and they're both protagonists, like they actually have a friendship that is different, I think, in quality from the other relationships somehow, right? Like it's like somehow it's more of a pure...
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how that works, but it is. It's
He seems the most himself with her at the end of it.
yeah, like himself. Well, at the end of it, yeah. So I haven't figured that out.
Did she know her dad would kill Adam? Because her dad, Greg Kinnear, implies that she only said what she said in front of him so that he would take the action of having him killed.
Yeah,
Do you think she did on some level do it for
I
that
actually
reason?
don't think so.
You don't
I
think so?
don't think so.
Her and her father have such a, like, they're having a conversation that is totally different from the conversation that you're hearing, though.
It's true.
So
yeah.
That's true. So
Really interesting.
actually,
Yeah.
I mean, again, turning her into really a real person, would that that person would be mostly unconsciously trying to get her father to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
you're right. Yes.
Okay, do we think that she suspects that Joe killed Tom?
I think she must. I think she must. I mean, that was always unclear to me as well.
Okay. And then my final question on this line. In the scene in the hospital where he's like, I'm going to tell you everything. Let's start with my name. I'm Joe Goldberg. Does Joe tell her everything?
That is also something that the writers are going to have to specifically decide because it really does change the trajectory of the next season. I think he withholds as much as possible unless he's asked directly, because that every bit of information that is revealed gives you more time and story to to use. So, but I don't know. I mean, again, it's funny. Sometimes as an actor, you really don't need to know these things. You just you just really have to be playing the moment.
Yeah.
So Kate says to Joe many times she doesn't want to know about his past. There are times when he's like starts to tell her, or he's not going to tell her, but he's just telling her, I have a past, I've done bad things. And she tells him again and again, she doesn't care. And part of the reason is because she herself has a past that she's not proud of, and she doesn't want to get into that, and she doesn't want to be defined by her past. And so she gives that to Joe as well. And I wonder what you guys think about that concept if we bring it into the real world. Like, is there value in turning a blind eye from the past of a partner?
That's a really good question. I think it's very contextual, right? Because like overlooking the faults of others for the sake of actual love makes a lot of because you actually you need to do that to have a successful relationship, period. Like, you know, that seems to be a part of love. I don't know. I mean, it seems to be like you need to overlook the faults of others because everybody's got faults. But where do we draw the line? Yeah.
I think you should pay attention to patterns. Like if we all have one-offs, like things we've done that we're like, I can't believe I did that, and you never do it again. I think we all have those. But then there's also like we have patterns. And so I think like if someone has a pattern of infidelity and fidelity is important to you, I don't think you should overlook that.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So, yeah, I think that's my answer. Yeah. Is it a pattern or is it like a mistake that someone made in the past that you're just like using to like bludgeon them or like, you know, not even give them a shot when we've all made mistakes?
Yeah.
But I don't know. This is tricky. I don't know if you should go digging into people's past. Like, I think if the information is available to you, use it. Like, make an informed decision, but don't like go digging into someone's past.
I actually really agree with everything you just said. I think those are the right discernments to make.
I do think in a situation like Kate and Joe's, if we're not talking about murder, if someone is telling you like, I have a past and they're not getting into it, I do think in that case, it's worth digging into.
Yeah, like, can you say more?
Yeah, because I think you should overlook the faults of others, but how can you do that if you don't know?
See them?
Yeah, if you don't know what actually happened, you know, and you have a frank conversation about it and what's happened since then and how a person has grown, how they've made certain choices since then to avoid that. Or, I think it's important not to ignore a person's past.
Yeah. Because also, like, if you just want to have a functional relationship, you're going to need to understand how their past informs the way they are now.
Exactly.
And you know, it is not digging, but it's, I think a responsible partner and a mature partner would say something along the lines of like, okay, you know, if we're going to go any further, I need to know what's informing like your pattern. Like I need to you know, like you can't hide that from me.
This is only tangentially related, but I've heard Jennifer Lopez say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was giving her advice when she was going to get married to a previous partner, and just for people tracking the timeline. And she told her, like, when you marry someone, sometimes it's good to just be a little blind. Like, just like, don't notice some of the things. Like, don't make it an issue, which I thought was interesting advice.
Interesting.
Conversations.
Yeah.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a real thing?
That is a real thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
that was the
feel
advice
like
she gave her. Sometimes it's good to be a little blind. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't totally disagree. I don't think that's like a crazy thought.
No. I when I heard it, I was like, I think that makes sense. Like once you're already married to the person, like don't dwell on those
Commit
things.
and you will figure it out together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's contextual. It's like, what are you blind to?
Yeah.
Because like, it's totally contextual.
Yes, totally. It has to be just little.
The context
tiny
has to
things.
be
like
Ruth
the way
Bader
they unload
Ginsburg.
the dishwasher is annoying, but you just.
Okay, you probably can't answer this, but I was wondering if there's a final breadcrumb for Joe's trajectory in season 5. So Joe says that Montrose has made some mistakes, but everyone wants him to run for political office. This is kind of early on in part 1. And then Joe says he inspires me.
Oh, right.
So my question is Joe going to run for political office in season 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't say. I don't know. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. But it certainly is interesting and tracks with like themes that are being explored. But
if they haven't thought about that or made that decision, they should. Like that would be such a good.
It's so
such a
good.
good arena for a show.
It's true, and a great arena to surround him with douchebags.
Well, I can tell you that the way that a climactic sort of series finale has been pitched to me is that it tracks with something along the lines of what you're saying. In that arenas that Joe was sort of barred from, which made him, which gave him the ability to justify all of his sort of his hatred, frankly. Like, oh, I'm not allowed into this space. I'm not allowed into this space. Basically, all of those barriers are going to fall down, I think. And so then you have a person who can no longer justify the way he was justifying his violence and his, you know. And so then you have somebody who's forced to confront themselves in I suppose really a different way than they ever have before. And so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. This has been a really enjoyable breakdown of part 2. I just want to ask you a final question. If you were keeping up with any of sort of the fan comments, what was your favorite inaccurate theory of what was happening in season 4? Sort of like a plot twist that was wrong.
I don't remember who said it. You might have even said it, or you might have told me about the comment, and I thought it was like, what? Joe has a brother.
That wasn't me.
That wasn't you guys. Okay, so I was in an interview, and somebody was like, oh, yeah, it's Joe's brother. And I was like, Joe's brother? That sounds so silly. Guys, Joe has a half-brother.
He does?
In the flashback, so if this person, I mean, I think they're right. When he sees his mom, and she's like with another baby, that's her
like a
baby,
car seat, I
right?
think.
So Joe has a half brother. So at some point, I heard somebody say that, and again, at first I thought it was like such a kind of like
silly
sounding idea. It was like, oh, it's like epic soap.
Yeah.
But then I realized he does have a half brother.
Stay tuned. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Penn.
It feels like a not satisfying final question. What's a good final question?
What was Joe like when he was? If Joe could go back to his 12-year-old
Wait,
self,
didn't
what
we
would
already
he?
do that?
Yeah.
Did we do that?
We did that first one.
He would stab him.
Stab him. Yeah.